The noble of culture is always reflected in every breath of Balinese. That valuable legacy has been inherited by the villagers of Singapadu Tengah from generation to generation. With their utmost hospitality, always makes every single person that come to the village feels like home, and the villagers are belong to their family. A village where the culture snakes into every single activity in the daily life. Even the warm breeze on the rice field can make you realize the sincerity of the locals. Everything they do is come from their heart. With Tatuang Asih philosophy, their sincerity of humanity even more reflected. Because they believe that every single person is equals and there is no difference between you and me. The village is also surrounded by green and lush natural resources that can make you step back from your daily hustle and take a deeper breath to calm your mind. Art is another form of culture that lives in the society. From carving to sculpture, they had drawn their life from generations. With the greatest dedication and high talented hands, they formed the sources into a high quality of arts. Arts that preserving the values of culture. Arts that can enticing in a glance. They do believe that tradition and culture will always lead them into a harmonious life. Life that is connected to the soul of nature. Because nature is the source of our life. Don't forget to taste a traditional cuisine of Timbungan. A cuisine that is made from natural ingredients and cooking process. A traditional dish that gives you a high quality taste that you will never forget. Nature is also formed in many things that influence the life of the villagers. Not only in the sculpture and cuisine, but also in body movement. Learn how the Balinese dance as an offering to the Almighty God. And feel the vibrance at the temple. A mesmerizing temple with great reliefs in Balinese architecture. All you can find in Singapadu Tengah, Gianyar, Bali. A sincerity of arts.
in a place before this time. They hold answers to who we are. They know where we come from. But why are they calling and asking me to feel this sacred land? Java. This land has so many secrets and stories to tell us. Its everlasting beauty connecting us with our past and future. Oh, Mother Earth and Father of the universe, can you hear us? These are offerings from our heart. Our love shines in every creature. It lives in every being. I'm ready for this magical journey of my life to look for something beyond. This journey is to remind us of ourselves. Now, I'm ready to rediscover our myth, our heritage, our DNA. And our history. And here we are standing on the top of the cosmic mind. And I'm here to witness the greatest moments of our memory. And hello, we meet again. I see you, and I see me. Now, I want to meet my true self. Can you feel me? Mother, hold my hand. Father, breathe with me. I am discovering myself.
Gusti Tunggal lan Manunggal, anak-anakku jagat Nuswantara, eling karo sejatine urip bangsamu. Sejatine urip iku ana ing asuh. Memayu hayuning bawana.
see through lights within us. They're shining in every being. Our love remains for an infinite time. Mother, Father, I can feel you. This absolute love, it is always within all of us.
Jagat Kuswando tetep eling lan tuhu panturane bumi Jagat Kuswando ing anak ulun madya usara bisandya jiwa jagat jauh.
Tak beranjak, kami menunggumu. Merindukan tatapan kagummu. Membayangkan ramai tepuk tanganmu dan menantikan kedatanganmu. Kami di sini untukmu. Bersama mereka yang ingin mengisi harimu. Dan yang ingin dekat denganmu. Semangat kami masih tersimpan. Dan kami telah menyiapkan setiap keindahan dan kekayaan. Senyuman dan isi hati kami ingin segera tersampaikan. Keajaiban kami, cerita-cerita kami, dan tradisi kami ingin segera bertemu. Kami tahu kamu pun ingin cepat kembali. Karenanya, kami selalu menjaga tempat ini. Sampai nanti kamu kembali dengan rasa tenang, kami tunggu di sini, di Indonesia aja.
The Honorable Rector of Udayana University, Bapak Profesor Dr. Insinyur Inyoman Gede Antara MNj IPU, the Honorable Dean of Tourism Faculty of Udayana University, Bapak Dr. Iwayan Suwardana SST Par Empar, the Honorable Invited Speakers, Dr. Fiakaslao Filemonu from University of Surrey, a very good morning for you there, and Mr. Jeremy Badri Parker from University of Adelaide. And now it's evening, I think, there. Good evening, Mr. Parker. We do hope that you are in a good condition and happy to sharing with us. And one last invited speaker, Dr. Aziza Azmi, PhD from University Technology, Mara. And the honorable panelists, Bapak Dr. Andes Inyoman Sunarta, MSE, and Ibu Yayu Indrawati, PhD, both are from Udayana University. I do really apologize if I mispronounce all of your name. All distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, may we greet you all in Balinese way. Om Swastiastu. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and good afternoon to you all, everybody, ladies and gentlemen. A very warm greetings from Bali to each and every one of you, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the international webinar, Food for Thought, Waste-Free Tourism, that is held virtually in this beautiful location in the 22nd of April 2022. The webinar is one of the series events in celebrating the 37th anniversary of Tourism Faculty, Udayana University. Give applause for Tourism Faculty. Yeah. Well, thank you. With me, Danny, I will be your host in this international webinar. On behalf of the organizing committee, we extend our participation and your appreciation. We extend our appreciation to you for your presence and also participation today. Happy to inform you, ladies and gentlemen, that this webinar is attended by more than 600 participants from many cities such as Jakarta, Surabaya, Yogyakarta, and also many countries around the world. We are very honored to have you all, ladies and gentlemen, and to all participants, if you have any difficulties in grabbing some chairs in Zoom meeting, so you may also enjoy this event by streaming from live YouTube. Well, ladies and gentlemen, before we commence the international webinar, let us now listening to the national anthem of Indonesia. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Indonesia Raya. Respected participants, ladies and gentlemen, thanking the Almighty God, let us now, for His blessing, let us now take a moment in silence in prayer session. So ladies and gentlemen, please let's have a prayer. Amen. Distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, waste-free tourism, known also as zero-waste tourism, and it becomes a very crucial issue to be discussed over the time. It is one of our big responsibility in managing tourism destination, sustainably, so in managing tourism destination sustainably and setting the goal of sustainable tourism development. Food is now becoming more and more important and interesting topic to be discussed in tourism. With the great speakers and also panelists of the webinar, we are going to have some discussion and hopefully may enrich our knowledge of a few. But before we start the whole agenda, ladies and gentlemen, by hearing the speeches, we would like to remind you to stay connected with us until the end of the webinar. Please make sure that you mute your microphone, and it's an honor for us to have you on camera during the webinar. And now, ladies and gentlemen, let us hear the opening speech delivered by the Honorable Dean of Tourism Faculty of Udayana University. To Bapak Dr. Iwayan Suardana, SST Par Empar, the time is yours.
Swastiastu. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Salam, namo buddhaya, salam kebajikan. The Honorable Rector of Udayana University, the Honorable Vice Dean of Faculty of Tourism, Udayana University, ladies and gentlemen, a warm and pleasant good afternoon to one and all present here. Today, it is an honor for me to welcome of you, especially to our speaker today, Dr. Vikasiaus Fili Manau from the University of Surrey, Jeremy Bejeri Verker from the University of Adelaide, and Dr. Asila Asmi, PhD, from the University of Technology, Mara. Thank you for making the time to join our prestigious webinar today about waste-free tourism, held by Faculty of Tourism, Udayana University. Did you know that most of the tourism activities cause several negative environmental externalities that may accompany tourism overgrowth? The popularity of tourism destination is directly proportional to the production of waste. Tourism is a relevant contributor to economic growth and promote other sectors. Over the last few decades, the tourism industry has developed exponential and is now considered one of the most dynamic economic activities worldwide. If well designed and managed, tourism can help protect a nature and the culture heritage asset. As we know, tourism is experience. The environmental is one of the reasons why tourists don't want to visit the destination anymore. So, what should we do? How do we deal with waste in tourism destination? What is the interactive method to solving the problem? Let's discuss these issues in webinar with our insightful guest speaker today. We need not only collaboration, but also collaboration. We need solid waste management practice in the tourism destination, and this is very challenges. Today, webinar also marks us the beginning our serial event to celebrate the 37th Faculty of Tourism Days. To all of our distinguished and participants, thank you for your being here. Welcome and enjoy your seminar. Thank you for all participants. Terima kasih. Om Santi 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 Om.
Well, thank you so much for a brief and wonderful opening speech. Well, ladies and gentlemen, giving a high-quality environment is very often main motive for tourists to visit certain destinations. Waste handling, including waste food management in context of environment protections, is a major concern. Before we discuss further more about it, we will have a welcoming speech right now from the Honorable Rector of Udayana University. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Bapak Profesor Dr. Insinyur Inyoman Gede Antara, MNG IPU.
Om Swastiastu. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Salam Namo Buddhaya. Honorable Dean of Tourism Faculty Udayana University, honorable speakers for the international seminar Food for Tough Waste-Free Tourism, honorable participants, committee, ladies and gentlemen, I am Professor Dr. Insinyur Inyoman Gede Antara, Master Engineering IPU, Rector of Udayana University. I would like to welcome all speakers and participants of the international seminar, Food for Tough Waste-Free Tourism. This international seminar is organized by Tourism Faculty to commemorate the 37th Tourism Faculty Community Board Udayana University. On behalf of beloved institution and the academic society of Udayana University, I would like to congratulate Tourism Faculty of their 37th anniversary of Tourism Faculty Community Board Udayana University. We hope that the Tourism Faculty will be the center of excellence in the implementation of education, research, and community service in the field of tourism. We also hope that Tourism Faculty can create excellence, self-reliance, and culture-oriented graduates and intellectual figures in the tourism sector for the sake of Bali Island and the world. Ladies and gentlemen, Tourism Faculty has a great concern to preserve the environment of Bali Island, which can be said as a valuable asset for tourism in Bali. In this case, Tourism Faculty at Udayana University strongly believe that the tourism sector doesn't only talk about profit, but also to welfare of the people who are involved in the tourism sector and also the state of nature and the environment that is safe and free from potential disturbance. Waste is a big problem faced by almost all tourism attraction, which is give a bad impact on the image of the tourism destination and the environment as well. In order to maintain the existence of tourism in Bali, it is appropriate to have a special strategy to secure the Balinese environment and natural resources. One important strategy need to be developed is the strategy to keep Bali Island free from waste, especially food waste. If the waste problem has not been resolved yet, it will be difficult to create a comfortable, clean, and sustainable tourism image in Bali. Ladies and gentlemen, Bali is not the only tourism destination that suffer from the problem of food waste. Food waste, when disposed of in landfill, produce harmful greenhouse gases such as methane and carbon dioxide is a major issue globally, and it has also been identified as the most prominent type of hospitality waste. The big amount of food waste resulted in a major environmental, social, and economic issues. USA as their regulation regarding food waste, including the restriction on food waste and composting the soil by using food waste. Australia has developed national food waste strategies to develop, monitor, and evaluate the strategy to reduce food waste. Our country, Indonesia, already has law and regulation regarding food waste management. Yet Indonesia is stated as the second largest contributor of food waste in the world after Saudi Arabia. It means real action and implementation of the law are urgently needed. The need for in-depth thinking on waste management to minimize the impact of the waste problem and create sustainable tourism has led tourism faculty to organize this international seminar and invite 3 competent speakers from 3 different countries who are concerned with waste management in the tourism industry who will share their thoughts to us today. They are Dr. Vihaleus Filimonau from University of Surrey, UK, who will talk about waste food management. Jeremy Badgeri Parker from University of Adelaide, Australia, with the presentation entitled The Importance of Food Security. And Dr. Azila Asmi from University Teknologi Mara, Cawangan, Pulau Pinang, Malaysia, with the topic waste management in hospitality industry. From their presentations, we will gain beneficial knowledge on how to manage food waste in order to preserve the natural environment on Bali Island and keep it free from the threat of food waste. Finally, as the rector of Udayana University, I do hope this seminar will be beneficial to share information and knowledge regarding the waste management implementation in the tourism sector for all participants, and a better waste management strategy will be developed in order to preserve the nature from waste threat. Before I end my speech, I would like to declare the International Seminar Food for Thought Waste-Free Tourism, organized by Tourism Faculty to commemorate the 37th anniversary of Tourism Faculty Community Board, Udayana University, is now open officially. Thank you very much, and Om Santi 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 Om. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Salam Namo Buddhaya, Rahayu untuk kita semua. Terima kasih.
So, ladies and gentlemen, by the end of the speech, it marks that the event is officially opened. Please give a round of applause to all of us here to burn our spirit for this webinar. Oh, thank you. And now, ladies and gentlemen, we move to the session of presentation. This session will take around 2 hours with 3 invited speakers, and it will be linked to plenary sessions with 2 panelists. To lead the session, we would like to invite the moderator in this afternoon, Mr. Gede Indra Baskara, PhD. Also, the 2 panelists to proceed to the place that has been provided. Well, ladies and gentlemen, now let me read about the CV of the moderator and also the panelist. Mr. Indra Baskara, PhD. He grabbed his Master of Science of Heritage Tourism in Bournemouth University of the UK and got his PhD at the same university. Started his career as a lecturer in Indonesia School of Tourism Management, Bali, and now he is a lecturer and share his knowledge in Udayana University. For the first panelist, we have Bapak Dr. Andes Inyoman Sunarta, MSE. Well, actually, Bapak Nyoman had many experiences in tourism and leading organization. I'm afraid that we run out of time if I mention the whole information of him. Well, let me inform you that he graduated from Geography Faculty of Gajah Mada University in 1981, then continued his study to grab the master degree at the same university in 1994, and he got his doctoral degree in Udayana University. Since 1990 until now, he works as a lecturer in Tourism Faculty of Udayana University and trusted to serve in academic affairs and as a secretary in Magister Program of Tourism Study in 2008. He was the Dean of Tourism Faculty of Udayana University from 2017 until 2021. And now he is trusted as the coordinator of Doctoral Tourism Program. And he worked as the expert staff of the Governor of Bali Province concerning in environment, was the head of the International Partnership Program of Tourism Faculty, and now he actively leads many organizations. And for our beautiful panelists in this moment, Ms. Yayu Indrawati, PhD, she got her bachelor degree in English Literature of Udayana University in 2022. She grabbed her master degree in tourism study, still in Udayana University, and she graduated from Tourism Management of Waikato University, New Zealand for her PhD. She is now as a full-time assistant professor for hospitality and tourism management in tourism faculty of Udayana University. There are so many latest workshops, ladies and gentlemen, that she attended, like workshop on learning approach based on case method and team-based project, workshop on FIBAA International Accreditation for Social Humaniora, workshop on creative teaching, workshop on research method for social research, and many more. So ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, please welcome the moderator and the panelists in this webinar.
I'd just like to, first of all, I would like to welcome you all to this webinar. The webinar aims to increase the public awareness, especially tourism stakeholder in Bali, about tourism that is free of waste and pollution, as well as a series of activities to celebrate the 37th anniversary of our Faculty of Tourism, Udayana University. Okay, before the presentation begins, let me introduce the presenters here. We have three presenters. First is Dr. Filimenau, a reader from University of Surrey. He has a multidisciplinary academic background which combines business management, social sciences, and natural sciences. And his research interests revolve around the topic environmental sustainability in the context of tourism and hospitality. He is particularly interested in developing effective solutions to such global environmental challenges as climate change, carbon footprint, and solid waste like plastic and food in tourism and hospitality operation. To date, Dr. Filimenau has published over 100 journals, articles, and 3 books. The second presenter is Mr. Jeremy Badgery Parker, is the director and principal consultant with Primary Principal Proprietary Limited Company, a private agribusiness and international development company. He is adjunct senior fellow with the Center for Global Food and Resources, University of Adelaide. Mr. Badgery Parker has been involved in applied research, agribusiness international development consulting, project management, and collaborative and exclusive value chains, project assessment and evaluation, and opportunity analysis for over 25 years. Currently, Mr. Badgery Parker is developing new projects supported by Australian Center for International Agricultural Research in Indonesia, as well as in Cambodia and Laos PDR. Last but not least, Associate Professor Dr. Azila Asmi from Faculty of Hotel and Tourism Management, University of Technology Mara, Cawangan, Pulau Pinang, Malaysia. And she has been invited as a guest lecturer, keynote speaker, visiting professor in several universities in Indonesia, such as Erlangga, Sumatera Utara, Ciputra, Surabaya, Tourism Academy in Medan, and also but she is very familiar with tourism in Indonesia. She has a postdoctoral tourism management from University of Exeter. Okay, that's all for the introduction for all the presenter now. So let's enjoy the video about the waste.
Bali, Pulau Seribu Pura yang sudah tidak diragukan lagi keindahan alam dan budayanya. Hal tersebut menjadikan Bali sebagai destinasi wisata yang didambakan oleh wisatawan lokal maupun mancanegara untuk dikunjungi. Tiap sudut Pulau Bali menyuguhkan pesona wisata yang mengagumkan dan memiliki keunikannya masing-masing. Saat ini, perkembangan pariwisata Bali semakin berkembang dengan dukungan dari segala aspek potensial yang dioptimalkan. Budaya dan keunikan adat istiadat Bali serta alamnya yang asli dengan berbagai keindahan pada masing-masing potensi yang dikelola dengan berbagai kemasan membuat pariwisata Bali semakin berkembang. Dengan masuknya investor yang menanamkan modalnya di pulau yang juga dikenal dengan sebutan Pulau Dewata ini, semakin banyak pula peluang usaha yang tersedia dan mampu menambah lapangan kerja sebagai pengembangan tenaga kerja untuk penduduk Bali dan masyarakat di sekitar Pulau Bali, serta lapangan pekerjaan untuk seluruh penduduk Indonesia, baik yang ingin berkarir dan mengembangkan diri dalam bidang pariwisata. Pesatnya perkembangan Bali tidak terelakkan dari pengaruh buruk yang turut membayangi laju perkembangan Bali. Salah satu permasalahan yang ada adalah sampah. Belum lama ini, pemerintah Provinsi Bali dan pemerintah Kota Denpasar mengeluarkan peraturan tentang pengurangan penggunaan kemasan plastik. Hal ini dikarenakan keberadaan sampah plastik di Bali sudah sangat mengkhawatirkan dan perlu disikapi secara lebih intens agar destinasi Bali tidak tercemar oleh sampah plastik. Upaya pengurangan sampah plastik dengan penerapan kantong plastik berbayar tidak efektif untuk mengatasi sampah di suatu destinasi wisata. Pemerintah juga mulai melakukan sosialisasi dan menerapkan di pasar serta toko-toko modern termasuk di pasar tradisional. Tentunya, realisasi kebijakan yang sudah mulai dijalankan ini belumlah memberi perubahan yang besar terhadap pengurangan timbunan sampah plastik di Bali. Karena masih banyaknya produk kemasan plastik yang beredar di pasaran. Berdasarkan data penelitian terbaru, saat ini Bali menghasilkan 4.281 ton per hari atau 1,5 juta ton per tahun. Dari jumlah tersebut, persentase yang belum dikelola lebih banyak dari yang terkelola dengan baik. Pantauan yang dilakukan di kawasan hutan mangrove, Suwung, dan Pasar, tumpukan sampah plastik tampak di sela-sela akar tanaman mangrove. Tentunya hal ini sangat mengganggu pemandangan. Terlebih lagi, Bali merupakan salah satu ikon pariwisata yang cukup terkenal. Pemerintah, pelaku industri, dan kesadaran masyarakat dalam hal mengelola sampah sangat perlu untuk ditingkatkan. Maka dari itu, perlu diadakan suatu kegiatan pengelolaan sampah dengan sistem bank sampah. Penerapan pengelolaan sampah dengan menggunakan konsep 3M, yakni mengurangi sampah, memanfaatkan sampah, dan mendaur ulang sampah, diharapkan dapat membantu proses berkurangnya sampah yang harusnya dibuang ke TPA, mengurangi pencemaran udara akibat pembakaran sampah, dan menciptakan lingkungan yang bersih, bebas dari sampah.
Okay, the procedure of this webinar is all the presenter will present their presentation, followed by comments from the two panelists here, and then question and answer session from the audience. So each presenter will be given about 30 minutes for presenting their presentation. Here we have only one panelist here with me, Bu Yayu. I'm sorry, the other panelist, another panelist will be available online. Okay, without further ado, I would like to welcome the first presenter to deliver the presentation. Good morning, Dr. Philomena. Are you there?
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, Dr. Philomena, it's very clear. So,
excellent.
Okay, cool.
Om Swastiastu. Selamat siang. Assalamualaikum. Thank you very much for your invitation to contribute to this high-profile event. I'm honored to be here. You can hear me well, just to reconfirm, right? And you can see my slides well as well.
Yes.
Is it right? Yeah, excellent. So my name is Vyacheslav Philomena. I represent the University of Surrey here. I'm based in School of Hospitality and Tourism Management. And today I'm going to speak about the opportunities and challenges of tourism, hospitality, food waste management at a destination level. And it was very useful to look at the video which was presented to us a few minutes ago, because clearly Bali is one of the global renowned destinations, which is beautiful, but concurrently suffers from excessive amounts of plastic and food waste. So what I would like to start my presentation with is by saying that food waste has been recognized by the United Nations as a global societal challenge. And therefore, food waste has been featured in a number of United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. And especially the United Nations Sustainable Development Goal number 12, which is about responsible consumption and production, highlights the opportunity, but also, well, suggests that it's necessary to reduce the amounts of wasted food that we generate at a global level to, well, more appropriate levels, to put it simple. And why is it important? Well, simply because about 1/3 of the food which is produced across the world for human consumption is either lost or wasted. And this is the most recent estimate by the United Nations Environment Programme. And if we were to translate sort of these 30% into an absolute number, I'm a quantitative sort of academic, so I like absolute numbers. So we would be speaking about 1.3 billion tons of food wasted per year. And I would like to say that this number is likely to be a very conservative estimate, and you will see what I mean by saying this as we move along my slides. And I would like to also mention at this stage is that despite the fact that we do waste excessive amounts of food across the world, there remains to be the lack of conceptualization of how we understand the phenomenon of food waste. First of all, it's important to differentiate between the two definitions. We speak about food loss as something that arises at the stage of food production. So for instance, think about you have a beautiful garden, you have apples in there, and then the storm comes and all apples taken away, and therefore they cannot be consumed. So even so they cannot be consumed, potentially these apples could be consumed, and therefore they have to be labeled as lost food. But we also speak about food waste, and these food waste arises primarily at the stage of food consumption. So think about you go to a supermarket, you buy more food than you need, and then as a result, you do not consume this food, and this food goes to a bin. So this is what we define as food waste. Having said that, if we look at the literature, sometimes different studies, they utilize these two definitions interchangeably. And some studies, they also speak about food loss and waste as a sort of integral definition that does not differentiate explicitly between food loss and food waste. Then we also need to understand that there is a big problem with defining the eatability of food. I mean, clearly we have some food which everyone eats in the world, regardless of where we are based, in Australia, in the United Kingdom, or in Bali. But then certain foodstuffs, they are not eaten because of different reasons. And a classical example here would be, for instance, watermelon seeds. Yeah, sort of, it's a very popular snack in China. You can buy it in any supermarket, but then in the UK, for instance, it's a no-no. Then another example would be sunflower seeds, which is a very popular snack, again, in many countries of East Central Europe, but also in the Middle East. But then if you go to a supermarket in the UK, you can also buy sunflower seeds over there, but only as the feedstock for birds. And then also, there are some more interesting examples with regard to the eatable / non-eatable food which can be consumed even in restaurants. And you can see these examples on this slide. So for instance, potato skins. So we would normally not eat potato skins. They would go to the bin, but they are eatable. So therefore we speak about so-called semi-eatable food, right? So in the past, potato skins would be eaten in a time of crisis, but believe it or not, in many restaurants of the UK, potato skins are being served these days, and it's considered to be a delicacy. So if you go to a restaurant of a celebrity chef, such as Gordon Ramsay, then you will be looking to pay something in the region of £10 as a starter for potato skins. And another example, and I do apologize if there are vegetarians among the audience, bone marrow. Again, we would normally put all the bones into the bin because we would not assume that it could be eaten. But in reality, this is something what we call a semi-eatable food, because bone marrow is now considered to be a so-called superfood. And again, many restaurants in the UK, especially those which are the trendy ones, they do actually serve bone marrow as a starter. And again, here on the picture, you can see an example of the meal which you can get in many restaurants, and you will be looking to pay something in the region of £15 for that. So again, this brings us back to the question, what can be eaten, what cannot be eaten, and what should be defined as food waste, and what should not. So, but what is very clear across the literature is that when we speak about food waste, it does imply explicit human involvement in food wastage. So, unlike food loss, similar to the example of a storm, which has destroyed your harvest. So when we speak about food waste, this is clearly, it happens clearly because of consumer behavior, human involvement, such as you go to a restaurant, you order food, and then you did not finish that food, and this food goes to waste. So this is what we define food waste. Then, given that there is a lack of conceptualization, this has led some academics to propose another term, and this term is wasted food. So wasted food does say that, food has been, put into the bin because of one reason or another, and some academics, they do actually claim that it's more appropriate to utilize the term wasted food in place of the related terms of food loss and food waste. And then what is also interesting to mention is that there have been some recent developments in conceptualization of food waste, and we speak about metabolic food waste. So metabolic food waste implies the wastage of food because of overconsumption of food. Yeah. So some people claim that it's not ethical to refer to obesity as an example of food wastage, but some academics say that actually, you know, if we are overeating, if we are eating too much than required, then we should also speak about food waste in the context of the human body's metabolism. So when we speak about the food waste challenge, specifically in the context of food service provision, it's important to note that this sector of the global economy accounts for at least 15% of global food waste. And I would like to underline this number, at least 15%. Most likely, this is a very conservative estimate or even a guesstimate. So this is because the amount of food waste in the global sector of food service provision are characterized by the highest degree of uncertainty. Believe it or not, but in different sources, you can see the numbers of uncertainty which are equal to 100%. So in reality, this 15% across the world can be as high as 30%. And this finds confirmation in some national studies which have been conducted on the topic in question. For instance, my own study in Russia has shown that food waste in the context of the national food service sector may amount to up to 20% of the national food waste. And when it comes to China, the number of 50%, 50, I would like you to think about this, has been reported. So building on this, I would like to say that when it comes to accurate figures on food waste in the sector of food service provision, they're non-existent. Yeah? So the United Nations Environment Programme, they have published a very important document last year, which is called the Food Waste Index Report. And what they have established in that report is that only 9 countries out of 233 across the world, they have figures of food waste in their national food service sector that can be characterized as being of high confidence. Yeah. Again, I would like you to think about this: 9 out of 233. And what is also interesting is that this report claims that over 90% of all the countries around the world, they have food waste estimates which are characterized by low or very low confidence. And this particularly applies to the most developing countries. I think there was only one developing country which had food waste estimates in the food service sector which were of high confidence, and that country was Malaysia. Yeah. All other countries had food waste estimates which were extremely low confidence. And what is also important to mention at this stage is that because of this reason, because of the lack of accurate numbers, what we tend to do, we tend to apply very crude generalizations in order to understand the amounts of wasted food in different countries around the world. So for instance, a sample of 10 restaurants can be used in order to, well, extrapolate the number and arrive at the number of food waste in the national food service sector of a specific country. But this is tricky, isn't it? Because 10 restaurants, well, some of them may be big, some of them may be small, some of them may be fine dining, some of them may be casual dining. So the patterns of food waste in all these restaurants, they will be different. And therefore, sort of these generalizations will be extremely crude. Or another example, my understanding is that the number of food waste produced in the national food service sector of Indonesia, which is 7.5 million tons per year, or 0.6% of the global total food waste, this number was extrapolated from the figures obtained in Malaysia, purely on the basis that Malaysia, well, is a neighboring country to Indonesia. But then again, the patterns of food consumption, but also food waste generation in Malaysia and Indonesia, as you can imagine, can be extremely different. So what are the main reasons why the accurate numbers on food waste in the global sector of food service provision are, well, non-existent or very difficult to obtain? Well, the first reason is because the sector is extremely complex and diverse. So we speak about restaurants, we speak about hotels, we speak about coffee shops, but then even within the subcategory of restaurants, there are so many different business types, such as fine dining restaurants, casual dining, quick service restaurants. So in order to understand the patterns of food waste generation in all these different segments of the sector, we need to undertake research which focuses on these specific types of food service businesses. Then we also speak about the cultural factors. So, for instance, those of you who are familiar with Mandarin language, you will probably recognize the notion of nianzi, or face. So this sort of concept applies to food consumption in China, in Vietnam, but also I'm told in Malaysia. And what does it mean? This means that when you go out to eat, especially with your friends, but also with your business partners, then in order not to lose your face, you order more food than required for consumption. And as a result, sort of a lot of food goes to waste. Then we also speak about the lack of established methods of measurement of food waste, specifically in the context of food service provision. For example, in the UK, we have the Waste and Resources Action Program, and the instructions provided by this program, they recommend that we need to measure food waste in a restaurant 3 days a week in order to understand the annual amount of wasted food. However, the problem here is how do we define this 3 days a week? If we measure food waste on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, then you can appreciate that this figure that we're going to obtain in the result will be an underestimate, because these 3 days represent the days of low demand. Yeah? So therefore, we need to think carefully about how we measure food waste across the week, and we also need to think if these measurements across 1 week are sufficient, because we speak about seasonality of demand for food across the year. So you cannot compare how much food you're going to sell in your restaurant in the winter in the West to how much food you're going to sell in the summer, again, in the West. Then what is also interesting is that many food service managers, they have developed the attitude whereby they say that they do not waste food. They do not consider food which they have sold to customers as wastage, because from their viewpoint, okay, the customer has paid, so therefore I've made my money, and therefore I don't care about what happens to the food after this food has left my kitchen, right? So this has to change. And what is also interesting is that very often food service managers, they try to shift responsibility for their food waste. They say, oh, it's not my responsibility, it's the customer responsibility. And but then we speak about all-inclusive business models, for instance. So then the question arises, who's responsible for plate waste during buffet breakfasts? Is it the hotel manager who has made the decision to provide the all-inclusive food, or is it the customer who was too greedy and put too much food on the plate? Then another problem is data confidentiality, because quite a lot of food service providers, they do not share data on food waste because they believe that by sharing this data, this will damage their business reputation. And finally, I would like to say that the managers do not wish, or sometimes, well, they don't want to collaborate with academics. So they say, oh, academics do not understand our business needs, so therefore, I'm not going to share the data on food waste with them. And sometimes what academics do, they only calculate the amount of food waste and try to understand the impacts of this wastage on the environment, for instance. What they tend to ignore from time to time is the social element, which is people, because this element is extremely difficult to understand. And social behavior, human behavior is irrational, right? And at the same time, humans are the ones who are responsible for wasting food. So therefore, this has to change. So academics need to work more closely with food service managers in order to prevent the problem of food waste occurrence. So what I have described so far, I hope, has given you an idea that there is a need for a dedicated stream of research on the phenomenon of food waste in the sector of food service provision at the global level, but also at the level of specific destinations, such as Bali, for instance. And out of curiosity, I did some literature review, and what I realized that when it comes to Indonesia, and correct me if I'm wrong when we have the time to discuss that, there is one quantitative study and 2 qualitative studies on food waste, but these studies, they focus specifically on households. I found no research in peer-reviewed English-speaking journals on food waste in the sector of the Indonesian food service provision. And there is no research in Bali, it appears. And that was one of the reasons why we have engaged in a new project, which is called FOSTA, which stands for the Opportunities and Challenges of Food Loss and Waste Prevention in Different Segments of the Food Supply Chain in the Post-Pandemic Future. And this project will deal with the challenge of food loss and waste across the food supply chain of Bali. And this project will be led by our moderator, Dr. Bhaskara. So if you have any questions with regard to this project, or if you'd like to be involved, please address these questions to himself. So what I would like to say is that when it comes to food waste in the food service sector, it is a major cost for a restaurant business. And that should, in theory, represent a very important reason why food service providers need to engage in food waste prevention. In the UK alone, it's estimated that food waste costs the national food service sector at least 2% of the annual turnover. And again, I would like to say this number is likely to be a guesstimate or a conservative estimate. The real number is likely to be much, much higher because the accurate figures on food waste in the food service sector of different regions in the UK, they are still not accurate enough. So when it comes to the reasons why food waste occurs in restaurants, for instance, so about 50% of food is being wasted at the point of cooking. So for instance, a chef makes a mistake by sort of cutting a steak incorrectly, and then this steak goes to waste. Or they did not anticipate demand, they overcooked, and as a result, there are too many surplus meals which need to be distributed. 35% of food is being wasted at the stage of consumption. So this food waste is often referred to as plate waste. And then we waste about 15% of food in handling or storage. So if you think about fridge, which breaks down, then this kind of food wastage should be attributed to this kind of operational process. And then when you speak about the top 3 categories of wasted food in the food service sector, so it's fruits and vegetables, because this is fairly cheap. Bakery, again, because these items are fairly cheap, but it's also meat. And it's interesting because meat obviously has quite a big profit margin, and therefore, again, from the viewpoint of business profitability, the large amounts of wasted meat should potentially serve as an incentive for food service providers to engage in food waste prevention. Research has shown some interesting relationships between the type and size of food service businesses and the patterns of food waste generation. So it appears that less food is wasted in chain-affiliated enterprises. And this is primarily attributed to the fact that the chain affiliates are more efficient when it comes to managing the operational processes in their businesses. There is also correlation between the quality of food service provision and food waste. So when it comes to fine dining businesses, for instance, more food is wasted in the kitchen simply because, well, you have to make a very nice looking meal out of your ingredients, and therefore you chop a lot, and as a result, sort of you waste a lot of food in the kitchen before your meal comes to the customer. However, when we speak about casual dining, quick service businesses, so in this case, most food is being generated at the stage of customer plates. And there is also correlation between business size and food waste. Larger companies appear to waste less food per guest or per customer. And again, this is partially attributed to the fact that the larger companies represented by the chain affiliates, they're more efficient when it comes to organizing their operational processes, including those processes which relate to food wastage. So when we speak about management of food waste, it's important to note that this management is largely passive. And here on this figure, you can see a classical food waste management hierarchy in the context of food service provision. And the idea is that you need to try and prevent food waste occurrence by, for instance, trying to forecast your demand correctly. If this doesn't work, then you need to try and reuse or redistribute your spare ingredients or surplus meals. If this doesn't work, then you can try and recycle your food. If this doesn't work, then you try to recover some value out of your wasted food by the means of, for instance, anaerobic digestion. And then, sort of, if this doesn't work, then you have no choice but to send your wasted food to landfill. So unfortunately, across the world, the absolute majority of food service providers, they avail of the option of disposal. They try to prevent, but not as much as we academics would like them to. So disposal is their preferred option. And the primary reason for that is because the sector is extremely conservative. So when you go to them and ask them, why do not you prevent your food waste? They say, oh, we've been doing this for many years. I mean, you know, the way how we cook, therefore we are not going to change what we've done so far. Then I also mentioned that food waste estimates are sometimes considered business sensitive, and believe it or not, but very often food service providers do not even know how much food waste they waste. Yeah, and then in business world, we speak about if something does not get measured, then this something cannot be managed well. So if we do not have accurate numbers on food waste, we will not be able to identify the key areas for corrective interventions. Most food service businesses, they do not consider environmental sustainability as a priority, so they're concerned with profit making. And it was interesting that in my research, I've seen specifically the effect of COVID, because we speak that during COVID, many people have developed more positive attitudes towards sustainability. What I have found in my research so far has been the opposite. Many food service providers, they do actually not care much about sustainability, because they now try to maximize their profits because, well, for the last 2 years, they couldn't make as much money as they wanted to because of adverse reasons. However, not everything is so gloomy, right? I mean, you may have deduced from my slide before that everything is bad. No, it's not that bad. And there are some glimpses of hope. And the good news is that there are some examples of best practices in food waste management from around the world that should be routinely inventoried, and they should be assessed from the viewpoint of how they can be upscaled for application across the sector, but also across the different markets of food consumption outside the home. For instance, when it comes to the kitchen processes, in order to reduce food waste in the kitchen, artificial intelligence can be used in order to forecast demand. So there are dedicated platforms for these purposes, such as Prognolite or VNow. You may have heard about this one. The only downside of these kind of technological solutions is that they tend to be too expensive at the moment. But I'm hopeful as the economy of scale grows, then these solutions will become more affordable for small to medium-sized enterprises. Then some restaurants, they retrain their chefs on resourceful cooking. Resourceful cooking means that you train your chef on the reuse of surplus ingredients. Then when it comes to surplus meals, there are some organizations, mostly charitable, which engage in food rescue. For instance, I work with the Scholars of Sustenance, which started in Thailand, but now they're available across the whole region of Southeast Asia. So, I mean, from my viewpoint, these organizations should not even be here, right? Because we should not be wasting this food in the first place. But they do a great job. We must recognize that by redistributing surplus food to the people in need. And then some restaurants, specifically in the UK, for instance, they have adopted what they call what's available menus. So they work very closely with their farmers, and the farmers sort of supply certain foods to their business. But the restaurant managers do not know what kind of food they're going to get every day. Yeah, and that's quite interesting. Yeah? So some customers are really excited about this, because when they walk into a restaurant, they don't know what they're going to eat. Yeah? So some people do not like it, but some people do.
Sorry, Dr. Filimenau, sorry for interrupting. You have 5 minutes.
I've got 3 minutes, right? I've got time over here. Yes, I'm going to finish. So when it comes to the post-kitchen processes, we can nudge customers by displaying signs, just showing them that they should not be wasting food. We can also engage in on-site composting. So by doing this, we can produce compost. And then we can also collaborate with farmers through the process, which is called the industrial symbiosis. And that's something that we tried to develop in Russia before the war started. So we were trying to promote the so-called collaborative bubbles of local restaurants, farmers, and food rescue charities, whereby the restaurants would work with farmers, the farmers would supply fresh food to restaurants, and the restaurants would give the wasted food to farmers for composting. And then there would be a charity integrated into this bubble, and this charity also would work with restaurants by redistributing surplus meals, and with farmers by sort of sending the wasted food to these farmers for composting. So, and then I would like to finish by saying that when it comes to tourism, when it comes to destination management, again, the good news is that the problem of food waste has been recognized by the key players in the market, such as the United Nations World Tourism Organization and the United Nations Environment Program. And they have developed something what they call the Global Roadmap on Food Waste Reduction in the Tourism Sector. And the idea behind this global roadmap is to develop some supporting tools which food service enterprises, professionals could use in order to prevent food waste occurrence in their operations. And if you go to their website, you can see these various tools. I particularly like the one which is called Buffy, which was developed by the Pacific Asia Travel Association. So this is your region. So it's called Building Understanding for Food Access and Tourism. So the only downside of this kind of tools is that they're primarily designed for larger companies, right? And I've spoken to those guys who were involved in the design of these tools, and they admitted that the uptake of these tools by the small to medium-sized enterprises, which, by the way, I would like to remind you, they represent the bulk of the food service sector. So the uptake of these tools among the SMEs still leaves a lot to be desired. So the big question is how to encourage their use by small to medium-sized enterprises. And this is my last slide. So on this last slide, I would like to say that it's important to develop some, measures or indicators, if you wish, in order to better understand how we can monitor and manage food waste at a destination level, such as in Bali, for instance. And these indicators should first of all, be concerned with quantifying food waste. Again, as I mentioned before, if we cannot measure something, we cannot manage that effectively. So we also need to solve some methodological problems over here, because how can we separate the amount of wasted food produced by tourists from the amounts of wasted food produced by local residents? There is no methodology which has been put in place in order to tackle this important question. We also need to understand what kind of food we actually waste in terms of its character. Is it fruits and vegetables? Is it meat? Because in this case, we can develop more dedicated solutions for food waste prevention. We need to understand if there are facilities available for on-site separation and composting of food waste. We need to understand the method of food waste collection. In the UK, for instance, it has been proven that private contractors, they tend to be more effective when it comes to food waste collection compared to communal services. And also we need to understand the method of disposal. Obviously, if wasted food goes to landfill, it's a no-no. But if this food is distributed through the methods of land spreading, then it can be okay. And what we also need to understand, we need to work with the local food service providers in order to deduce what kind of measures they have adopted in-house in order to prevent food waste occurrence. And we need to specifically differentiate between the measures which they have adopted in the kitchen and in the post-kitchen processes. And lastly, I'm not sure if this applies to Bali, but in Europe, for instance, a lot of tourists, they get sent to destinations by large tour operators such as TUI or Virgin, and very often they have
I'm sorry, Dr. Filomeno,
commitments.
we have to stop your presentation because of the time.
And I have stopped here. Thank you very much.
Thank you for the informative and interesting talk, Dr. Filomeno. So,
no, that has been my pleasure. My apologies that I have overrun slightly, but I'm sure if there are any questions,
but
the colleagues
please,
will ask these questions at the later stage.
Yes, there will be session for question and answer, but please don't go away. We're going to have the second presenter here. Please welcome Mr. Jeremy Badgery Parker. Mr. Jeremy Badgery Parker.
Thank you.
Yeah, the screen is yours.
Okay, is that all working, everyone?
Yeah, it's clear. We can see your slides.
Well, good afternoon, and distinguished guests and participants, and thank you for inviting me to participate today. So the topic I'm talking about is just from a slightly different angle on this area of food waste, particularly just as a food for thought, and that is about the importance of food security. So I, just as a background, I mentioned before that I'm a private consulting company, but my background is actually coming from the agricultural side of this debate, and my technical background is in protected cropping and small acreage farming and collaborative value chains. I'm also at the University of Adelaide. So there are various definitions that can be applied to food security. And the United Nations Committee on World Food Security, they've sort of summed it all up. That all people at all times have a physical, social, and economic access to sufficient, safe, and nutritious food that meets their food preferences and dietary needs for an active and healthy life. So that's quite an all-encompassing definition. There's also been identified 4 pillars that go to our understanding of food security. So availability. This refers to the supply of food and how it's governed by production, distribution, and on my computer at the moment. Production and distribution, and also the exchange of goods. Second pillar is the access. So this refers to how affordable and how well allocated is the food, and also does it meet the preferences of our consumers. The utility of the food is about whether it can be safe to consume and does it actually meet physiological needs of the person consuming it. The fourth pillar of food security is about the availability, access and utility of that food over time. And so this is an important concept too, in the sense that is food security seasonal, or is a lack of food transitory? Is it predictable, or is there a chronic problem? So at the heart of all of these is essentially 2 factors: the availability and the accessibility of food. But we can also reframe these into what I think is a much simpler concept of 2 components, and that is supply and cost. So food security is a function of the supply and the cost for the consumers. So when we take this as a bigger picture look at it, we can see that there's multiple dynamics involved. Lots of elements that are involved in supply and cost of food. Supply is whether it's continuous. Do the producers have knowledge of what they're trying to produce? Perhaps we're talking about the cost of production. Is it an affordable thing to produce, and can people continue to produce it at the cost that it's sold for? The yield or growing conditions, the productivity of a farm, are they contributing to supply, or is supply being affected because those conditions are not being met well? Previous speaker talked about a lot of the food waste issues in terms of product being lost after it's been produced. Shelf life is a big part of that. When people buy food and purchase it, if it doesn't last as long as they need it to last, then it's also being wasted. So there's a lot of issues in food security. The waste and loss is a key one, but there's other issues about grading and sorting. How is the product packaged? Is it traceable? Does the consumer actually accept and trust that the product they're getting? Is the way it's being produced sustainable? So all of these factors are variables that affect how we see the quality of the food, and whether or not the supply meets our purposes, and also whether the cost impacts on us. So coming back to the topic of this short presentation is, why is food security important? Maslow's hierarchy of needs, I think, remains one of the simplest and most intuitive explanations for human motivation and ultimately our achievement. The highest level of human needs is fulfillment and personal growth. This is essentially the theory of where we're all trying to get to. But a capacity to grow and to be fulfilled comes from recognition and respect. So self-esteem as individuals empowers us to go beyond and become better. But underpinning the needs of recognition and respect is that as individuals, we have to have a place to belong. That might be family, community, relationships, but essentially we have a need to belong somewhere. And our relationships in our communities, they cannot be sustained without our need for safety and security and health. Otherwise, we cannot focus and devote resources for higher order outcomes. But the primary needs of every one of us are food and water, shelter and protection from the environment. Each of us has a personal understanding of these needs. We don't need someone at the end of a Zoom telling us what is ultimately and critically important. We can see, we intuitively know that there is a need that supports everything else. And that's food. So if we don't have food and water, if you don't have enough food now, or you don't know if you will have enough food next week, are you going to be truly focused on much else about other needs or your community or what you're trying to do from day to day? Be aware that as ourselves, we understand our own need for food security, but also to consider that everyone else has that same need. We cannot, for example, expect a farmer to always deliver products that we want if they are not secure in their own food needs. So another way of looking at it is that food security impacts and depends on every stage of a production and consumption cycle. For example, an extreme weather event, maybe a pest incursion or a labour shortage, that might reduce output from a production area, that might affect supply and thus food security for someone. A consumer might not be able to afford the product, either because there is shortage supply and the price has gone up, or the cost of productions are just too high for that consumer. Logistics, costs, or poor communication can prevent the product actually even getting to market. Or maybe the viability is a question. Can a producer continue to invest if they're not getting fair returns, or as they might need to spend more of their own money securing their own food supply and cannot invest in the farm or their business for someone else's supply? Maybe the critical inputs are unavailable. Necessary inputs such as fertiliser. That could be because of insufficient capital, maybe a war on the other side of the world, or a government policy banning particular inputs. And we can just look at Sri Lanka in recent times for an example of where policy can go wrong. Or maybe it's just pure logistics that is affecting supply due to a pandemic. But the centre of all of this I want you to think about is value, the concept of value. So supply and cost, they are attributes of value. If we can better understand value and improve the conversion of resources to create value, then we have the great opportunity to positively influence. We can positively influence the security of food. Supply and cost are two of these that we talked about. But we also often think of price, where's price over here, as a measure of value. But there's more than just that. We might be thinking about appearance of the product. Is the packaging recyclable? Is the product certified? And if it's certified, for what? Is it safe? Is it chemical free? Is it carbon neutral? Does it register fair work practices or social inclusion? Or maybe the product just guarantees that it meets specifications. Is the taste acceptable? So value is the perceived worth of something. And what I like to think you to consider today is that the value is what drives demand. Value determines acceptance. And value of the product that we're talking about is going to confirm whether or not it is viable for someone to produce it for us. So to digress a little, ACR, the Australian Centre for International Agricultural Research, in partnership with Udayana University and UNRAM and USRAT and BPPT in some of the provinces, we're developing a new project with a focus on integrating local agribusiness value chains with high-density tourism as a structural model for local agribusiness. Essentially, the project is about supporting the availability and the accessibility of local food, which, as we started our talk this afternoon, is about food security. So the project Creating Resilient Communities through smallholder and inclusive tourism markets in Indonesia, what we aim to do is use a network approach to understand the local agribusiness tourism ecosystems. How are they working together? And the previous speaker actually mentioned some work that they were doing, I think it was in Russia, just before things went a little bit unfortunate in recent months, about how you connect and drive the collaboration between partners in the same ecosystem. This project will also be looking at consumer-based mechanisms and testing them, and can functions such as quality parameters or specifications or packaging, those sorts of measures, be change drivers for better practices on the farm and in the supply chain. And working with participatory groups from agribusiness and tourism sectors, people actually conducting the work from day to day, how can they be involved in ensuring that value is created for everyone? At the end of the day, what we're aiming to do is develop a model that can guide development where tourism is invested and developed, in high density particularly, how agriculture can integrate and link with that at the same time. So just coming back to where we started before about the needs. If we return to these simple and complex needs, and as people, and as communities, and as industries, we're relying on food as the critical foundation, then supply and cost must be our primary considerations. But we also need to consider that wherever we are in the food chain, how resources such as land, fertiliser, water, as well as knowledge and skills and labour, how these interact, how they impacted by efficiency and productivity, waste management. It's not just in the restaurants and the resorts, but also on the farm and in the supply chains. How environment and the surety or certainty of a market, and also policy, are used and wielded as tools that influence our decisions in the security of food and the production of food. Also, how market demand and the values that we assign to food, how that changes practices. And again, if I refer back to the previous speaker, is if you don't value that food necessarily, the restaurateur who's already sold product doesn't mind if it's wasted because it's not their problem anymore. So their value doesn't look about the food, it looks about their business perspective. So it's how we assign value to these products that can drive our ultimate change. And I was just thinking to the moderator, you might have let a little bit more speaker, because I'm going to cut very short here today. I'm not sure whether I missed a slide. But I wanted to go back to why. Why is the importance of food security? What is the importance of it? It's because every single thing depends on it. a producer producing for a restaurant or a household, if they are not secure in their food, then they cannot continue to produce. So every single thing that we talk about when we're talking about food management, food waste, food production, links back at some point to how secure the food supply is for every one of us, including the people often at the very basics of our supply chains producing that food. I might just leave it there, moderator, Kamakasi, and we'll have some conversations later on.
Okay, thank you for very informative talks, very interesting, Mr. Jeremy. Big round of applause for Mr. Jeremy Batch-Parker. Okay, next, the third presenter is Associate Professor Dr. Azila Azmi from Faculty of the Hotel and Tourism Management, University Technology Mara.
Thank you, moderator. Can you hear me? Because
yes.
I'm having problem hearing your voice. It's a bit slow.
Yeah, it's very clear.
All right, thank you. So I will start sharing my screen now. Can you see the screen?
Yes. Yes. Screen is yours. You can start your presentation.
All right, thank you, moderator. Okay, Assalamualaikum and a very good evening, everyone. My name is Azila. I'm from the Faculty of Hotels and Tourism Management. First of all, thank you, Udayana University Faculty of Tourism, for having me today. It is my honor to be here with the two of the previous speakers. Okay, my topic is a bit slightly similar with the previous one, but I'm focusing on the case of island-based tourism. So this is my presentation outline. I will start, give an overview what is hospitality industry. I know everyone is aware what is hospitality industry, but what about the linkages between hospitality industry and the waste management? And then we're going to go through the types of waste in hospitality industry, and I will focus on the third point will be the food waste management in the island-based hotel, and the sustainability of food waste management. What are the several strategies that we can adapt when we talk about food waste? So hospitality industry and food waste. We know that hospitality industry is a big umbrella. So under hospitality industry, we have the travels industry, the lodging, the events, food and beverages and recreation. So all this segment of hospitality industry for us to create an enjoyment so that we ensure that whenever tourists came to our country, we want to make sure that we satisfy them. But another important thing is that we have to take a look that hospitality industry is the world's largest and fastest growing industry. So what about the waste management? So since our main agenda in hospitality industry is to create or to fulfill guest satisfaction, because we are providing service that are intangible, we want to create the best experience, the best moment for our guests. We will try to fulfill whatever they want. But the question is, as the world's largest industry, does it generate larger waste as well? Because based on the record that we are the #1 producer of waste, why do I say so? Because if you look at here, a hotel guest is estimated to generate up to 1 kilo of waste per day on average. So can you imagine the amount of waste is generated every day by the hotel guests? Okay, there will be 1 million ton of waste generated worldwide annually. And in Malaysia itself, when we talk about the food waste in Malaysia, there is about, according to a study by Hashim et al. In 2021, there are about 16,688 tons of food waste generated. Okay, so it's nearly 80% of the generated food is still disposed at the landfill. So it's the question here. So the awareness to reduce and recycle the food waste among Malaysia is still poor because according to several interviews, most of the hotelier receive less training in terms of they don't know what to do with the waste and the rest. Okay? In fact, previous studies stated that 64% of the respondents heard about the compositing of the food waste, but only 40% of them have begun to composite the practice. So it's still a question mark here. So what about the type of waste that we produce in the hospitality industry? So it's important for us to know when we talk about hospitality industry, two basic waste that we have is solid waste and food waste. For the solid waste, we have the dry waste, plastic waste, non-biodegradable waste, and also for food waste, we have the wet waste and also biodegradable waste. So several authors have, for example, a source that I get it from Zen and all have listed what are the components of food waste and where does it come from. For example, for the household waste, we have from the food, kitchen waste, they use dirty paper, wrapping the plastic bag and the rest, and come from hotel different department. So you can see from my slide, there are several other types of waste and what are the source of this waste. This is considered as non-hazardous waste, and it can be, some of it can be recycled. And also the same author come up with a list of hotel waste based on hazardous waste. So this is dangerous, and most of the item, if you still recycle, it still affect our environments. And this is the focus that I'm going to share with you today, which is the food waste management in the island-based hotel, the case of Langkawi Island. Why I choose Langkawi Island? Because I believe that Bali and Langkawi have shared a similar in terms of their attraction to tourists, both of the sandy beaches and all the beach activities. So Langkawi Island is known as the duty-free island. It's located in the west of coast of Malaysia, 30 kilometers of the coast of northern Malaysia, and is adjacent to the Thai border of Kota Roto. So the total land mass of the island is around 47,848 hectares. It's a cluster of 99 islands, but only 4 are inhabited, and Langkawi is one of it. Interesting about Langkawi, in 2017, Langkawi has been awarded as the Southeast Asia first UNESCO Global Geopark due to its rich in archaeological and biological heritage. So tourists visiting Langkawi every year for about 2 years. Sorry? Shall I continue?
Yes.
Okay, because I heard the voices now. All right. Each of the geoforest park in Langkawi has showcased significant geological, biological, and cultural heritage, with this abundance of natural wonder, from ancient rock formation and dramatic mountain peak to a wealth of flora and fauna. But what about the case of food waste in Langkawi? A study has been conducted by previous author. There are many hotels that have been built in popular island in Malaysia, and one of it is Langkawi. To date, there's about 168 hotels in Langkawi, but only 56 hotels provided the accommodation with food and beverages service. So the rapid development of hotel on the island has caused a significant impact on the environment due to disposal of food waste in the landfill without treatment. So the only landfill that have in Langkawi has reached its maximum capacity. It's located in one of the villages in Langkawi called Kampung Belanga Pecah. Hotels in Langkawi are one of the main contributors to the waste due to the fact that tourists generated double per capita waste compared to local people. Whenever you have got a chance, please come and visit Langkawi. It's a beautiful island, but again, behind the scene of the beautiful island, there's a case of food waste. So the case study has been conducted by Kasavan in 2019. So the research question is, the author want to find out what are the drivers of food waste generation and the barrier to sustainability of food waste management in the island-based hotel. So the study is conducted using qualitative methodology research, where the data has been collected based on the 23 selected hoteliers in Langkawi. They has been interviewed using a semi-structured interview question. And the data of the qualitative data has been analyzed using a summative approach of qualitative content analysis. So based on the result of the study, these are the several factors that influence the implementation of food waste management in Langkawi. So the factors is divided into 3 main themes. Number 1, we have the internal factors. Number 2, we have external factors. And number 3, we have intermediate factors. For internal factors, they are referring to the factors that within the hotel, so within the organization itself. First, they talk about the poor hotel management and policy. And number 2, the lack of skill in the food preparation among the staff. The lack of facility and food waste technology. Most of the staff interviewed saying that they don't know how to decompose the waste. They don't know what to do with the food waste. And there's no implementation of waste audit and waste separation in most of the hotels in Langkawi. For the external factor, it is said that due to the reason that unsustainable food consumption patterns of the customer, particularly in the buffets. That remember when I said we are in the hospitality industry, we try to make sure that our guests happy when they're staying in restaurant. So it's difficult to educate the guests to create awareness, saying that for them to control the portion of what the restaurant to minimize the food waste. And there's also a risk of food ingredient spoilage due to the location of Langkawi that located in the island. So the food is transported via cargo to the island. So the long terms of the food supply chain also result in this issue. And for the intermediate factors, there is an ineffective communication between hotel manager and staff. Okay, supposedly the hotel manager and the staff supposed to have a good communication so that they know how many food they should produce per day in a particular hotel. There are also inadequate education and awareness among the staff. The staff never attend training or program that related on food waste. They only say that the training is only for the newly appointed staff, but when they look at the syllabus of the training, they just talk about a minor aspect of food handling. They talk about the food safety, food security, but not to mention about the food waste. So this is one of the things that we should look after this. And waste management as landfill, especially in Langkawi, is more difficult to handle because it's difficult to find a location for the new landfills. So the implementation of the hotel policy, for example, maximum time allowed to leave the food on the buffet tables, influence the generation of food waste in the hotel. Space for storing food items also was limited in Langkawi, in most of the hotel in Langkawi, and there's an inadequate bins available for waste disposal. So 90% of the hoteliers agree that they have insufficient human resource in food waste management. So how to manage the food waste? When we talk about the sustainability issues nowadays, so you know that sustainable food waste management require us to concern not only about the environment, but the whole process of the life cycle of the food itself. So when we talk about food waste management, the United Nations Sustainable Development Goal aims to have food waste in 2030 because they say that reducing the food waste provide multiplicative gain for people, planet and prosperity. It improves the food security, address the global problem of climate change, biodiversity loss and pollution, and reduce the burden and waste to the management system itself. So if you look at my screen now, there are several studies before this have compiled what are the global food waste reduction strategy that has been implemented in hotel and restaurant throughout the world. So for example, as I mentioned before, there's a policy that, for example, the food in the buffet line cannot be kept for later use and cannot be taken away by the customer. But surprisingly, there's an initiative by the several hotels in United Arab Emirates, Germany, Austria, and Switzerland. They donate the food. Okay, if you look at here, through the foodsharing.de, more than 30,000 people have shared 25 kilo of food. Okay, so and the rest of the country, for example, Thailand, they have their menu engineering. For US, they have the food waste tracking and the rest. So this is compiled by Pirani and Rafa in 2014. Maybe we can come up with a new implementation of the food waste after this. So the other strategies toward the sustainable food waste management we're supposed to have a holistic approach when we talk about managing and preventing the food waste, because food waste is generated by all stages of catering operation, from the hotel purchasing department, the storage, the food preparation, and the serving itself. Food waste could be minimized effectively if the hotelier can apply a sustainable approach to each of the activities related to food management to achieve the sustainable food waste management. There should be an effective communication between the supplier, hotelier, customer, and communities, and also to educate and create awareness on sustainable food waste management among the guests of our customer. But most importantly, we need more empirical study that related to food waste management. I agree with the first speaker that we have less study conducted on the food waste management. In Malaysia itself, most of the study also based on the issue on environment, not on the specifically on the food waste. And another strategy that can be implemented is throughout the waste mapping. Okay, waste mapping involves monitoring of waste generation at the property in terms of which type of waste is generated, in what amount, and in which location. A waste map, normally the hotel can come up with a waste map and then subsequently created to reflect this data. So the property can subsequently plan its waste management operation in a more efficient manner. This is several of references I picked from the presentation just now. With that, I think maybe I go too fast, but anyway, thank you for listening. Just a short sharing session from me. Thank you. Over back to you, moderator.
Thank you very much, Dr. Azila. Very interesting and very informative talks from you about the waste management. Right, so next session is going to be comments from the panelists. So we have two panelists here, but here, not here, I mean, offline beside me on my right, Ibu Yayu, and online is Mr. Sunarta will participate in giving the comment about all the three presenters. I'll give the floor is yours, Ibu Yayu.
Right. Thank you so much, Dr. Baskara, for the opportunity. Good morning, Dr. Filimeno, and allow me to address Mr. Jeremy Badgery Parker in Australia, and also good evening to Dr. Azila Azmi in Malaysia. So perhaps before I give my comments, I would like to share my stories. About a couple of months ago, I read on a newspaper regarding a food waste in Denpasar. I was so surprised knowing the statistic that almost 115 kilograms and even up to 185 kilograms that food being wasted per day. And if we are looking at the sustainable goal development, the second list of sustainable goal development, which is the zero hunger, and I think we need to integrate all sectors to pay attention on this issue. Definitely, this includes tourism. Why tourism then? The questions arise. So food, I think, as been mentioned by all the three invited speakers, food is one component in a visitor's experience in a destinations. And it also can strengthen overall holiday experience of tourists. Well, sorry for the trouble. So when we are talking about food waste, we are not always talking about rotten stuff, but it is also about fresh food that being wasted and discarded. And if we look at the food waste in tourism and hospitality, I think, in my opinion, it's occur in the sequel actions. It is, in one hand, within tourism's activities, it is, has a very strong connections with the food availabilities. It fosters the agricultural products, and also farmers need to supply the tourism and hospitality sectors in a regular way. However, at the same time, this is also where the food waste is started. For example, number one, from the supply chains, we can see where sometimes the farmers need to throw away their harvest because it doesn't fit with the cosmetic standards of the hotels, for example, of villas, restaurants, you name it, supermarket as well. So this imperfect harvest, for example, fruits that, let's say, small in size, the damaged vegetables, wrong size of orange, then it needs to go to the bin and being wasted, or goes to the animals. And we goes to the second layer of the food waste. When you see the productions in the hospitalities, industries, and tourism as well, as been mentioned by the speakers, 50% that food waste comes from the preparations. And it also contribute almost 50% of the global waste. And then we see from the consumption side, almost 30% and up to 60% of hotel and restaurants or perhaps event on a certain occasions, they provided buffet and some of them goes to the waste again. If we calculate all those percentages, how sad it is seeing in one side that the food is being wasted, and on the other side of the regions, we can see that people are still hungry. And then again, of course, the questions rise here. How we are in tourism and hospitality industries can take part and contribute to prevent these actions. I think tourism, despite being the source of the food loss and also food waste, I think we can pioneer the program to tackle on these issues. We in tourism and hospitality, I think we can ensure that the food is available and everyone have access to food. So I think perhaps we can start with simple collaborations with the local farmers, for example, to organize how to manage the food waste and doing a proper waste management and also composting waste. And I would like to try to collaborate with what has been said by Dr. Filomeno, Dr. Zila, and also Mr. Parker, that it is necessarily we need to do waste management that really have to be holistic and open and active. Dr. Filomeno said that all this time the approach of food waste, it tends to be very passive. Therefore, I think we need to collaborate more to minimize the issue of food waste. And again, of course, food is a very important component in our life. And to ensure that food is enough for all of us, I think we need to be being sensible as a human being on how we consume our foods. And also we need to think others need as well, of course. That I think therefore, start from the small things. I think we can also contribute in making the food secure to all of us. And perhaps I would like to add some more comments on how to stop the food is being wasted. It's that to ensure food security occur around us in terms of supply and also affordable in terms of the price.
Pak, katanya masih belajar,
I'm sorry again for the troubles.
We're having technical difficulties. Some of the participants just turn on their microphone.
So again, perhaps how to prevent this food waste. I would like to take you all to flashback when we were still a child, I guess. We still remember how our parents teach us, especially our mother teach us to, sit and then enjoy our food and then finish our foods. What's actually the moral of the stories from this? That we are, all the people here, have the power to stop this sad way of wasting food. We can make noise, telling big corporations, hospitality, industry, tourism sectors to minimize and then change this negative way of wasting food. Definitely we cannot do it alone, of course. We need to have wider collaborations with all stakeholders. And before I end these sessions, I would like to give you an inspiring quote from a famous author, and he's also a campaigner, a famous environmentalist, Tristan Stewart. He said that cutting food waste is the delicious way of saving food, helping to feed the world and also protect the planet. I think that's all from me, Dr. Baskara. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Ibu Yayu, PhD, for the comments. It's very insightful. I'd like to pass the second panelist for giving his comment about this presentation from all the presenters. Please, Mr. Sunartha, the screen is yours.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Indra Baskara, as a moderator. Thank you, my colleagues, Ms. Yayu, and also thank you very much for excellent three speakers. Not only in Mara in Malaysia, but also in Australia and Chile. Before I would like to start my comment about the concept of tourism. But before I would like to explain in English, I would like to know about what kind of the audience. I worry about maybe 19% the audience is the Balinese or Indonesia. But I would like to try in English first. I start my opinion. I believe tourism is an industry who survived the larger determinant by the good and the bad of the environmental. In carrying out its life, tourism will need resources and produce the waste. I repeat again, in carrying out its life, tourism will be need resources and produce the waste. So it means tourism, whatever kind of the tourism, especially the hospitality, will be produced the waste. Whether or not the waste produced is hazardous. It depends on the resource of the use, produce, consume, and how the produce after become the waste. What about the process become the waste? This is very important for we talk about the waste in the food of the hotel, especially. Lack of the understand about the waste, the food waste especially, because the sector is very complex. I believe with the belief and diverse, and also has not been considered as an important issue that can be endanger tourism destination. The sources of the food, what is mean the sources of the food waste are also diverse. It's not only the restaurant ranging from the luxury classes in the hotel and low classes one in the traditional market also. But we produce the food waste is generated depend on our local culture, especially in Bali. Bali have a heart of the the local culture, especially for local community in our local community. I believe also every area, every country have also the culture about their local community. Sorry. I would like to explain about about what do you call it, the waste management, especially in Bali. Sorry, I lost my PowerPoint. Yeah, maybe I would like to explain to you about what happened in Bali about the food waste, especially for the hotels. In Bali, I think what the Philly told us about there are a lot of food waste produced by every country. In Indonesia, also spotted about the large food waste especially from the hotel, especially Bali. And Bali, the food waste from hotel might be what I heard, when I have a research in more than 10 years ago. The food waste from hotel have economic value because there are a lot of the people, especially the local people surround the hotel, will need the food waste from the hotel, especially for their livestock. In Bali, we have a lot of livestock from pig maybe. Now, it's been the food waste from the hotel, especially in Bali, have a benefit for the local people who live around the hotel. And also I believe also in surround the hotel, not only the biggest hotel, but also the restaurant, the market, the small market, and the traditional market will be produce the food waste. But I believe also most of the food waste in Bali have a positive impact from the local people. Our government in Bali, I don't know, maybe defense of the G20 will be held in Bali in the October or September, I forget. So that our government work hard how to minimize the waste, especially produced from the hotel. Then the policy of our government, especially for the Banjar level, in Banjar level already organized especially the waste by develop the waste bank. We call it waste bank in every Banjar. And then I hope most of the local people in Bali support about it, because if will be running well, every Banjar will be health, will be green, and then their Banjar will be sustainable, especially for their resources. What I mean, If all of the Banyar in Bali, not only in the hotel, to implement it about the policy of our government,
Dr. Sunarto,
it will
sorry
make
for interrupting.
Balinese island, Bali Island, and Balinese people will be green. It will be spot of the
I'm sorry for
Bali
interrupting.
as island as a destination, tourist destination, sustainability. When I have the misalnya from our speakers,
Dr.
who
Sunarto, I'm
worry
sorry.
about how to manage the waste, because
the time is over. We just give you like 5 minutes to give the comment. I'm so sorry about this because we still have a question and answer session for the following next session. Okay, thank you very much for the comment from the second panelist. Okay, here we come with the question. We have like I think we're going to divide it into two sessions. Also, one session is going to be consisted of 3 questions. Dr. Filimenau, are you still there?
Yes, I am.
Yes, there are some questions for you, and also for Associate Professor Dr. Azila and also Mr. Jeremy Parker here. So, just want to address the first question from the audience. Dear Mr. Dr. Filimenau, my name is Maria Paulista from Udayana. So the question is, if every tourist knowledge about food waste is still lacking, and the food waste problem from the tourism industry continues to grow, how to solve this problem? Does the restaurant or hotel need to provide knowledge to tourists about that, such as providing information boards about food waste and its consequences, or do you think it's really help? Can you answer a question from Maria Paulista about this?
Sure. Thank you very much, Maria. It's an interesting question you're asking, and I think it's a rhetorical question. What to do with tourists? Because as I have mentioned in my presentation, I think human behavior is the key to all the problems. So I would like to say that when it comes to knowledge, my personal opinion is that knowledge is not a big problem here, because most tourists, they do actually know that food waste is bad. Yeah. The problem is that despite this fairly good knowledge, people continue behaving irresponsibly, right? So, and this is partially attributed to the indulgent nature of eating out, because when we go to a restaurant, we tend to forget about sustainability. It's all about having a good time, right? So therefore, I think, yes, one of the options could be to make some displays on the menu, for instance, right? Telling people that wasting food is not good. But then what I've seen so far in academic research is that these labels do not necessarily work. So from my viewpoint, it would be much more interesting to engage in the assumption what we call consumer choice architecture or nudging. For example, we can give incentives for clean plates to people. And I know some restaurants, they do that in the Netherlands, but also in the UK and in China. This particularly works if you go out to eat with your children. So if you provide a free bar of chocolate, children like that, and they do ask their parents to, clean all the plates. So, or you can also work with the size of the plates as well. So there is research which shows if you reduce the size of the plate by 1/2, 50%, then you're going to reduce your food waste by about 1/3. So, yeah, in short, I think, yes, it's important to do something to increase knowledge, but it's equally important to do something more active or proactive. And this is where there is a lot of scope for creativity, such as incentives or there is a project in the UK, but that's in the canteen context. So it's about gamification, whereby people from different departments of the university, they engage in food waste reduction and they get points for this, bonus points. And then at the end of the month, you sort of compare which department has accumulated the largest number of points by providing the largest number of clean plates. So as I said, it's a rhetorical question, and interesting approaches which can be adopted. And I think if you'd like to engage in research, testing the applicability of these approaches to change consumer behavior, I think that kind of research would be highly publishable, and you should probably do that. Thank you.
Oh, thank you very much. Very interesting when you said they make it smaller, the plates. So next question for you from Wisnu Pramudia. I'd like to ask question to Dr. Filimenau. So the questions, there are two questions for you. So what sort of policies that our governments can do to encourage food waste reduction in Indonesia or other developing countries? And second question is how to increase awareness regarding food waste at the local and international level so that it can have large support and recognition such as climate change.
Yeah, no, excellent. Thanks very much for these questions. Again, I think when it comes to the first one, it's a rather rhetorical one. What kind of policies can be adopted? So I will tell you that when it comes to the UK, there are no strict policies which prescribe restaurants not to waste food, because the government doesn't want to use the Chinese way, right, of demanding that you should be doing a specific thing, right? And this is partially attributed to what we call in the UK neoliberal economy, because when it comes to the neoliberal economy, the government expects the industry to take the lead on different initiatives such as food waste reduction. So because they don't want to interfere into how business operates, right? I have a problem with this kind of approach because, I mean, to me, if the government does not specify what it expects of the industry, then the industry is not going to do anything, right? Because the industry will expect the government to tell them what to do. So, and it becomes a vicious circle. What I think would be useful to do is for the government to set certain benchmarks, if you wish, right, to which the food service industry should sort of, try and achieve those. And the government could also provide some recognition, right, in the, for example, a label could be given to a restaurant which has committed to food waste reduction, but also which has reduced food waste, because commitment and actual reduction are two different things. So yeah, it's difficult to say what kind of policies will work or will not, because what may work in the UK will not necessarily work in Indonesia, right? But I think it should be about, well, encouraging, but probably in a more tangible way, the industry to engage in food waste prevention. Again, the industry itself can do something. For instance, in the UK, we have what they call the Sustainable Restaurant Association, which brings together about 2,000 businesses. And within this association, the participating businesses, they have committed to reduce food waste. And there are annual rewards for these, so this may work. And I think that would be something useful that you may consider in the context of Indonesia. And when it comes to your second question about awareness, so I think it's similar to the first question posted by Maria. So again, I mean, from my viewpoint, awareness is not a problem. People are aware that food waste is bad. We need to do something more. We need to go beyond awareness, and we need to change behavior. And again, as an example, if you look at the literature, there are studies which have utilized theory of planned behavior. And when it comes to theory of planned behavior in the context of food waste, the idea is that if I know that food waste is bad, then in theory, I should feel bad about wasting food. And then in theory, I should reduce my food waste. So, and I would like to underline, only in theory. In practice, this does not work, because we go to a restaurant and you say, oh, food waste is bad, but I would like to have a good time. So I will reduce my food waste next time when I come to this restaurant, not this time around. So I think, the restaurant should do something more tangible. Again, changing the size of the plate for buffets, giving rewards, giving incentives, giving some sort of recognitions. I mean, if you think about, you are a return guest to a specific restaurant in a specific locality, then why not to give certain certificates? You are the most responsible guest out of, whatever, 1,000 that we serve. So yeah, there is a lot of scope for creativity. And I think, again, it would be interesting to test what kind of creative measures the industry could apply, knowing the local context of Indonesia. Thank you.
Dr. Filipino, one last question for you. Just one last question.
Oh,
yeah. This is from Anom Suasapa, and he's asking about which is the more wasted food? Is it meat or plant? And which is more dangerous in terms of greenhouse gas produced?
Yeah, so the first one, the most wasted foodstuff is fruits and vegetables. And the reason behind this is because they're cheap, right? I mean, if you think about, I don't know if you're vegetarian or not, but for instance, I'm not, which I do apologize for. I know it's bad for the environment, but still, I like my steak. So when I go to a restaurant, if I order a steak and garnish such as potatoes, if I'm full, I'm going to eat the steak because I know it was too expensive, right? So, but the garnish will be wasted, and I think most people, they probably adopt the same kind of approach. Yeah, and when it comes to the most damaging foodstuffs in terms of the greenhouse gas emissions, then there is no, question to that. It's meat, and it's not because of the greenhouse gas emissions which get produced when this meat goes to a landfill, but that's because of the greenhouse gas emissions which are produced throughout the life cycle of that meat. Yeah, mind you, we need to grow. I don't know. Let's say a cow, right? So we need to feed a cow, then we need to bring that meat from the point of production to the point of consumption. So within the life cycle of meat production, there is an enormous amount of greenhouse gas emissions, and therefore, yeah, meat will be much more damaging. And I see there is the third question, right, about the packaging. So, yeah, that's a very good point you're making over here. Most restaurants, they do not bother separating food waste from packaging waste. And that's one of the reasons why food waste cannot be composted at a later stage. So I think one of the policies which the Indonesian government could try and reinforce is to ask restaurants to separate in situ food waste from packaging waste. Because in this case, packaging waste will go to, well, let's say a landfill, right? But the food waste amounts could actually be sent for composting or anaerobic digestion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Filipino. A big round of applause for Dr. Filipino for the answers. Yeah. Okay, for the next session, I have a question for Associate Professor Dr. Azila. You still there, Dr. Azila?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, there's a question from Gusti Ayudhya Setiawati, and she's asking about the any regulation concerning of food waste in Malaysia. Can you explain it to us?
All right, thank you for the questions. Yes, when we talk about food law and food act in Malaysia, we are referring to the Food Act 1983. Now it's a bit long, but under the Act 281. So under this act, it's more on the safety and security of the food. So this act provides the protection of the public against the health hazard, fraud in the preparation, sales, and the use of the food itself. And again, although we have those kind of acts in Malaysia, it's still difficult to control how the stakeholder or the restaurant owner behave on their part. Okay, but again, in Malaysia, when there's a restaurant that apply a standard cleanliness concept, they will get a badge from our ministry. But there are no certain practice when we talk about food waste. So hopefully maybe in the near future, we can come up with certain badges or certain certificate to be awarded to this restaurant so that they can also keep on, trying to apply the concept of food waste management in their restaurants. That's it.
Very much for the answer. Very interesting. There's a question for Mr. Jeremy Parker, Badgery Parker as well. So what's the difference between food security and food safety? Are you there still, Mr. Jeremy?
Yes, I'm here.
Yeah.
Thank you. Food security and food safety. If we go at the start of when I was talking about food security, one of the issues behind food security is its utility, is how useful is that food? Does it meet the needs that that food is for? So obviously food that is unsafe does not meet the needs of food, and therefore your food security is threatened by something that's not safe. So if you're producing all the food you needed, but it was contaminated, then it's not secure. So that's essentially the difference between those two things.
I see. Thank you very much for the answers. Very interesting. And the last question for this session, second session, is from Dr. Azila. Are food wrap, plastic, paper wraps considered as a food waste? Dr.
Yes, the answer is yes.
The answer is yes. That's simple.
Yes, it's part of food waste. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Right.
It's not food. Sorry. Again, come back your question. I hardly hear you because the line is not stable here.
Okay. A food wrap like a plastic or paper wrap is considered as a food waste.
It is a solid waste. Yeah, it is part of the. It comes from the food when you pack the food, but it is a solid waste.
Okay, I see. Do you have any question for
Thank you.
panelists? No? Thank you very much, Dr. Azila. Ladies and gentlemen, finally we have come to end of this webinar. We'd like to say thanks for the presenters, and I will give these floors to the MC. Thank you very much for the all presenters. Please give your big round of applause.
Distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, that was a very insightful presentation for all speakers and panelists. Have a big round of applause once again, ladies and gentlemen. All right, again, thank you so much for the sharing and the thought in this wonderful occasion. For that, on behalf of the organizing committee, we would like to hand in a virtual certificate of appreciation for all of the invited speakers and panelists and also moderator. For the first one, it's presented to Dr. Fiakaslao Filimono from University of Surrey. Thank you so much for your great contributions in this event, Doctor. Well, the next certificate is virtually delivered to Mr. Jeremy Badgery Parker from University of Adelaide. Thank you so much for sharing your perspective in this beautiful day. And we would like also to hand in a virtual certificate of appreciation for her presentation to Dr. Azila Azmi, PhD, from University Technology Mara. We're so honored to have you all here. Thank you so much. And we would like also to hand in certificates to all panelists and moderator. To the first panelist, Bapak Dr. DRS Inyoman Sunarta MSI from Udayana University. Thank you for your insightful sharing. And to the second panelist, Ms. Yayu Indrawati, PhD. Thank you for the intense idea. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we would like also to hand in the certificate of appreciation to our moderator in this occasion, Mr. Indra Baskara, PhD. Thank you for making this session run smoothly. Once again, thank you so much to all speakers, panelists, and our moderator for your great contribution in this agenda. Have a round of applause once again, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much. Well, ladies and gentlemen, before this webinar is officially closed, shall we have opened the camera to have photo session right now? All right. Now we invite you once again, ladies and gentlemen, to open the camera. And now I see many participants here are opening the camera. And please give your biggest and happiest smile, because smile represents a sincere gratitude and also keep the hope and spirit alive. Okay, shall I count right now? Get ready. 3, 2, 1. There you go once again. 3, 2, 1. One more time. Have a bigger smile. 1. Okay, get ready. 3, 2, 1. There you go. That's enough. All right, thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, the photo session ending the whole series of the event, and we have to say goodbye right now. Once again, thank you so much to the Honorable Rector, Dean, all invited speakers and panelists, moderator, and last but not least, thank you so much for all wonderful participants in this occasion, for your contribution and your energy of participation. Hopefully it may beneficially enrich our knowledge. We do apologize for any inconveniences occurred during the webinar. On behalf of the organizing committee, I am Danny saying goodbye to you. See you in the next agenda or the next event. We look to see you once again in the next occasion, and I close with Om Shanti 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 Om. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and have a wonderful day, everyone. Goodbye.
calling me. Can you hear it? The song of the universe. The voice is calling me. It's echoes of our past in a place before this time. They hold answers to who we are. They know where we come from. But why are they calling and asking me to feel this sacred land? Java. This land has so many secrets and stories to tell us. Its everlasting beauty connecting us with our past and future. Mother Earth and Father of the universe, can you hear us? These are offerings of ourselves. Now, I'm ready to rediscover our myth, our heritage, our DNA.
Indonesia is the most beautiful land in the universe. The land where we were born. The nation where we grew up. So many colors that live together in peace. With a million timeless treasures. With an abundance of natural wealth. Indonesia is not just wonderful. Indonesia is a wonderland.
Adik-adik mahasiswa silakan, adik-adik panitia semua kita foto bersama. Semua panitia ya.